in picture closed to maintain recording policy. What picture in picture? PP.
What?
I'm getting a message, but I don't use picture in picture.
Yeah, it's good. I'm actually flying out tomorrow to co-star in that short film up in Fort Wayne.
Nice.
So, shooting on Sunday.
Very, very cool.
That'll be
I
fun.
was almost in Lexington, Kentucky this weekend.
For
there is a toy and Comic-Con there, and the people there and I were talking, and I didn't realize it was this weekend. And they're like, "Oh my God, if we'd known." We'll talk about it after the podcast. But this ability to be able to host panels on these, and you've done it before, Chris.
Yep. Yeah, moderate panels. Yeah, moderate.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a great way to get in front of people to help establish credit. And then at the same time, if that's where we want to book a room, don't have to worry about liability. Don't have to worry about booking the room. We just jump in on board on one of those during the convention.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, there's some podcast conventions we should talk about too. There's a big one in Orlando every year.
Well, the cool thing is the Comic-Cons are now all about Gen X era people. Like I said, I saw the Breakfast Club. I saw the Karate Kid people. Hey, Pamela. Hey, Slugs. What's going on? Crazy. Jeff, Kristen, Doreen. What's going on? Chris is watching at Duff's in Buffalo. Sweet.
Nice.
Give me a minute. You
Put
guys
up-
continue and introduce the show a little bit. I'll be right back.
Put it up on all the TVs if they're there. Just mirror it up onto the televisions.
hello, everyone. I say someone wants a shout out in Tampa. Hello, Dwayne.
Sometimes when we're saying hello to everybody in the chat, it reminds me of what was that show back in the day where she would say
Good night, John Boy. Good night.
no, she would
Whatever.
say hello to like all the kids that would write in or something. She would say like hello.
What? What do you mean? What's the name of that show? You talking about Romper Room?
Yes, that's it. Romper Room.
Holy
Yeah.
moly! You didn't remember Romper Room?
I didn't remember Romper Room,
listen.
but that's what right. They would say, like, hello. Yeah, right. Am I right? Okay.
Listen, I have to say something about Romper Room before we even start here. That bitch
Never said your name.
my name. Never said Rochelle. Never, ever. I watched her faithfully every single week. She'd say hello to, like names I never even heard of. She never once said Rochelle.
She said John, but the problem with a name like Chris or John, you never believed it was you.
No.
There's too many of us. If she had said Rochelle, you might have thought it was you. Well, we always joke about sponsorships and that you guys have every ability to sponsor us, or if you know somebody's looking for a sponsor to reach the thousands and thousands of people that our show has the potential to reach, let us know. But today, for the heck of it, I saw Bourbon, also known as my buddy from Buffalo, whose family owns Duff's. We might as well just jump right to it and say that today's show is brought to you by Duff's Famous Wings in Buffalo, New York. Some of the most amazing wings in the history of the world.
Awesome. That's so cool. Well, if I get a speaking gig up in Buffalo, I will definitely stop by.
Yes.
Dude, gotta.
For sure.
Gotta. Incredible. It was my St. Elmo's fire is the way I describe it. It was on Millersport Highway. We could basically walk there if we needed to from UB campus. We'd grab a long table. We would order wings and a pitcher of beer and some French fries with brown gravy and just would be there for hours. And I think everybody's got that place. That's what made St. Elmo's fire resonate with us.
Mhm.
And probably why I'm going to have to remember to put that in as one of our topics of discussion. But today I'm not doing the topics. Today our topics are brought to you by none other than Chris Clues. So we'll jump right in. We're running a little bit late. I will give our little explanation of our show. This is the ThreeView Mirror. It's a weekly show where three friends get together and we just talk about things from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, Gen X era pop culture. And it can be movies. It can be movies. It can be music. It can be books. It can be the fashion we wore. It can be the things that we did. But all of it just goes back to an era when we were kids, when we were young, when we were growing up.
Or it could be things that Shell did that none of us ever did.
Yeah, this is premised on the fact that this is what happens when Chris and I are hosts. When Rochelle shells it, as the term has affectionately been known, anything could happen. But Chris and I put a thread that actually combines all three topics together. So when Chris and I are the hosts, you have to figure out what thing do all these three things have in common. And at the end, and please, only at the end, our live studio audience will throw out guesses in the comments to see who figured out what is that connection. My name is John Katrides, better known as Gen X Jono across my media platforms, and I'm joined by two friends, Shell, we'll start with you today.
Hi, I'm Rochelle O. Black, better known as GemX Shell, sometimes online, where I've recently started posting again. I'm sure, yes, we could just shell it for this episode, whatever. I see it in the comments already. I am on for next week, just letting you know. Bring a friend. You can all make fun of me. It's okay. And my husband suggested that next week's the topics. I will just tell you right now, they're shell, and shell. Those are the topics. Yeah, you'll have to discuss amongst yourselves.
And I'm Chris Clues, keynote speaker and author. I write and speak about the lessons for life and work that we can learn from 80s pop culture. All my books are on Amazon if you're interested. And I saw a couple comments as well. Kevin, yes, crab cakes only exist in Maryland. I'm from Baltimore originally, so I can vouch for that. Robert, John Hughes is not overrated. That's blasphemy. We'll have that conversation later. And somebody else said something about, hold on, I'm going to find it here before we jump in. There was one more thing in here. Kevin, the link is not Tom Petty. I already know not to talk about Tom Petty ever again.
Ever.
Well, yeah, ever. Yeah.
All right, guys, and this is the ThreeView mirror. All right, Chris, the show is yours. Take it away.
All right. So, yes, Robert, you have your view. I have mine. But I would love to have that conversation with you sometime about John Hughes. I'm very curious as to why you think he's overrated. In any case, back to the 3 topics for today. Let's see. We'll say one is like super specific and the other 2 are a little more broad. So the first topic is Saturday Night Live in the 80s. The second topic is Van Halen.
Nice.
And the third topic is one I hope we all can relate to, high school house parties.
Ooh. Oh, can we go? Can we just do the third one all day?
I could do the third one all day too. I love it.
So Saturday.
Was it the high school house parties?
Yeah, high school house parties. So Saturday Night Live in the 80s, Van Halen, high school house parties.
Got it.
Dwayne, I'm from Reicherstown originally, so not too far from Dundalk. I played a lot of baseball, football, and basketball in Dundalk back in the day. Okay, so let's jump into Saturday night. First of all, first impression of these 3?
Dude, I'm golden. Not a single topic I can't speak to.
Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
So Saturday, God, why can't I say Saturday? Saturday Night Live in the 80s. And just to give you guys an idea of the cast in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Eddie Murphy, John Lovitz, Dennis Miller, Joe Piscopo, Al Franken, Phil Hartman, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Dana Carvey, Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr., Billy Crystal, Dan Aykroyd, Martin Short, Kevin Nealon. I could go on, Garrett Morris, but you get the idea. It's pretty awesome.
Literally a cast of now famous people as well. I mean, like these are huge stars.
Yeah.
Most of them.
And most of them, some of them were already, some of them used SNL as a springboard, and some of them were already famous when they got there. So, for example, Eddie Murphy, I think he was like 21, 48 hours, and I can't recall if that was first or during SNL, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus obviously used SNL as a springboard.
She was only there one season, wasn't she? Like, if I can recall, I think she's funny and talented. Please don't get me wrong at this. But if I recall right, maybe she didn't get she wasn't in the right position for the writers at that particular time. She wasn't particularly funny on Saturday Night Live, if you ask me.
They had a moment in the 80s, a couple of seasons where it wasn't going well. Yeah. And Lorne Michaels actually came back after leaving, partly because they were struggling, even though they were very talented people. I think the lowest rated season was like 85 or 86, and it had John Lovitz and Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. and oh God, I'm losing my mind now. There's like 2 others that were pretty big on there, and maybe it was Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and it didn't it wasn't going well. So you're right.
Mm-hmm. And there were a couple of times in there, and I think I speak for all of Gen Xers. We grew up with Saturday Night Live. I remember watching it. I couldn't wait to watch it. We watched it through the sucky seasons, and we watched it through the amazing seasons. There were some things that we took like literally to school with us, and we repeated. Like making coffee. You know what I mean? Like we would go to school and say things like that. So we watched it regardless of whether it was a bad season or a good season, but there were shades of it in there for a couple of years. I can remember being like, I don't know if I want to watch Saturday Night Live tonight, or I can't wait to go home and watch Saturday Night Live tonight.
I don't know that I ever, so the 80s SNL, I don't know if I ever got to the point where I couldn't wait to watch it. I remember Saturday Night Live, and this is going to be a possibly not popular opinion. I remember it sucking a lot. Like 80% of every episode absolutely sucked. And that was the norm for Saturday Night Live for me. But even within that, if there was one or two skits that were hilarious, that's all it took. That's what you were talking about on Monday morning, whether you saw it live. I remember recording it a lot once we had a VHS tape in the house, a VHS recorder. But that was it. It only took one or two moments, one or two skits, and that was all you needed. And some of them were recurring. Sometimes there'd be a skit that was a recurring skit within Saturday Night Live, whether it was the Pump You Up, and they'd bring in different guests to make fun of through that, or You Look Marvelous, the church chat. The 80s really brought back those little skits within SNL that I think became so popular that they drowned out the rest of the show.
Somebody said she's stepping broccoli.
Yeah. And that was the Seinfeldisms, for lack of a better term. This was pre-Seinfeld. Yeah. SNL did it first. To Rochelle's point, we would go in doing that. Everyone looked marvelous at school. Everyone was chopping broccoli. If we were going to work out today, we'd be like, all right, I'm going to pump you up. Yeah. What was the one church lady? Special. Isn't that special? T-shirts were made, buttons on our jean jackets, emulated. So Saturday Night Live didn't have to be good, because by the 80s, it was already a part of our pop culture. It had already made it. It was unshark jumpable.
And what did you say? What jumpable?
Unshark jumpable.
It couldn't jump the shark, because it had jumped the shark moments, and then it was 10 times better directly after. It didn't ride a linear. It wasn't a line from good to bad. It was all over the place all the time.
That reminded me of the skit, the one where they would knock on the door. Land shark. We would do that all the time, knocking on the door. Who's there? Land shark.
Yeah, and then they had I love the skit with Martin Short and Kevin Nealon when they were the synchronized swimmers.
Yes.
Martin Short's like, I'm not that strong of a swimmer, and he's got the things. What are those floaties called?
Floaties.
I don't know. Floaties. Yeah, and his little nose thing.
Now, whenever they did, and into the 90s, there was a period in the 90s there where I can remember it was really, really bad there for a while too. But there was a lot of big stars in the 90s too. I absolutely adored in the beginning, and I guess then I got tired of it. But the Sherry O'Terry and Will Ferrell, the cheerleader episodes, those were always just hilarious, and they're all doing this, with their, we don't know why they were hilarious. Wayne's World, they made movies out of it, and they were amazing.
Candygram.
Yeah. And it was copied. I've seen Mad TV come into the comments. Yeah. I saw Kids in the Hall, Wirehead, and our other Canadian friends in our live chat. You got to give it up to Kids in the Hall. SCTV, which ran before and current. So it wasn't new to have these skit shows. And a lot of amazing people appeared on all of them. The Wayans brothers.
In Living Color.
Awesome. Did some groundbreaking stuff that today, I don't know. We say it all the time. I don't know if it would happen.
Hated it. 2 snaps.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute, John. I could argue one thing here with you here. All of us, me and you especially, not so much Chris, literally, that's what we do now Only we have our own little Saturday Night Live. We have our own little In Living Color.
Yes.
Me and you produce skits
Yeah.
often. I mean, here, I'll put on a wig. I'll put on an outfit. We'll start dancing. We'll do something with TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. They are all basically just little tiny versions of everyday citizens now, becoming their own little stars in their own little world, you know what I mean? And making our own skits, because for some reason skits, they just attract people. They're short, sweet, to the point, make you laugh and move on.
Con's right. I forgot Lauren actually was in charge of Kids in the Hall as well. That was a Lauren Michael production as well. I'm crushing your head.
Squish your head.
Squish it. Squish.
Squish, squish.
Like, no.
I think too, though, you have to I think one of the issues with Saturday Night Live is that you have this ensemble cast, but it does take time to gel, particularly when you are doing things live. And a great example of that is if you go back and watch any of these sitcoms that we all, most of us love, Seinfeld, for example, watch the first 2 seasons. It's not good. It took some time for them to gel and to really, in the 3rd season, very few sitcoms hit it from the first episode. I think Big Bang Theory hit it from the very first episode. I don't know how they did it, but they had chemistry right away. But the same thing goes for these Saturday Night Live. You think about all the people who went through. Shell, you mentioned the 90s. You had Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, and David Spade. They had some of the greatest skits of all time on Saturday Night Live when they played the 3 girls that worked in the clothing store. I mean, it was awesome. But that's because they had been working together a little bit outside of there, I think. And you have these great people, but you expect them to hit it off the bat. And it's not going to happen. Even the early shows with John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, all those guys that started it, I think the first half a season, it was okay. And then they all figured each other out and they killed it. But then they get so big that they leave. And so 2 of the people that have the best chemistry are off doing their own thing now within a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, basically.
And some of the writers, you can't talk SNL without bringing up some of the writers, because some of the greatest names in comedy kind of made it through. You would never know, but they were sitting there being writers. Conan O'Brien, who went on to write for The Simpsons before hosting the friggin' Oscars, no less, and having his own show. Conan was a perennial writer on SNL. He did it for a couple years. There were big names sitting in that writing room. I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus actually was a writer as well before making it onto the main stage. And the show, the talent is the talent, but the show is only as good as the writers.
Yeah.
They've got to give them something to work with. And sometimes I think the talent gets so big, it challenged the writers to know how to come up with something for these guys.
I'm drinking my Cavassier.
Do you know who the youngest?
Life is asking for the topics one more time.
Remember that?
So our topics one more time for those joining late. I keep trying to put it in, but it's 80s era Saturday Night Live. It is Van Halen and high school house parties.
Yeah. So do you know who the youngest cast member was in Saturday Night Live?
It was what's his face just a couple years ago.
Well, what's his face? Yeah. Who's what's his face?
Was it what's his face? I didn't think it was what's its face.
What's his face? It dated Ariana Grande.
I think you're making stuff up now.
It's not him?
Nope.
I thought he was like 19 at the time.
Younger.
Okay. No, I don't.
Was it the other guy?
He was the other guy.
What's her name?
The other what's his face?
No, he dated what's her name? Was it him?
Yeah. No, I don't know who you're talking about.
Who was it?
No, it was Anthony Michael Hall. He was 17.
That's who I meant.
He was 17 when he was on Saturday Night Live. So you think about that because he was on there in 85 or 86. He'd already done Vacation, 16 Candles, and The Breakfast Club. And he wasn't even 17 yet. Wow. Like, I didn't realize that because you always think of the high school, people playing high school kids are usually 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10 years older than the age they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, God, what was he? Probably 14 or 15 probably 15 when they did The Breakfast Club. That's pretty incredible.
Well, and it's got to be a challenge because the child labor laws actually limit how much time they can be on set. It limits how much school they can miss. So a lot of times we'll mock why Rizzo in Greece was 45 years old when she played a high schooler. But, well, all right, 30. But it's because they can work them 80 hours if they need to in order to make it work.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have a 16 or 17-year-old on set. You got to worry about tutors. You got to worry about laws. You got to worry about how long they can be on set, all of it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I was just surprised because I think of all the talent on there And, you know, I would have thought somebody mentioned Eddie Murphy, would have thought it would have been him, but no.
Yeah, I just met Anthony Michael Hall 3 weeks ago now in Orlando when I went down for MegaCon. Great guy. Goes by Mike, strangely enough.
Does he really?
Yeah, so those who know him refer to him as Mike. So, Mike, if you're watching, dude, it was great meeting you.
Should have called him.
Probably gonna be like, you don't get to call me Mike. You can
Call
call me Anthony
Ted.
Michael
I'm sure he would like that.
Mr. Hall to you.
Mr. Hall to me.
Yeah. Farmer
But
Ted.
really good guy. I will say, without besmirching anyone else, you could look at the line of autograph people that were supposed to be signing, and there would be placards with empty booths, and they just wouldn't fill their time. Anthony Michael Hall, my buddy Mike, would show up early and stay late. He was just there constantly, which I thought was really cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, Farmer Ted, man. Yeah.
And Con makes a good point. That's also why they use twins for young kids, because that way they can swap them in and out.
Yeah.
Mhm. Like not Family Matters. San Francisco,
Full House.
Full House.
Which aren't identical twins, strangely enough. They're fraternal.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
I just learned. I'm like, how's that possible? They don't look. They're not identicals.
Well, they don't look alike now. They definitely look different. But when they were babies, I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. But
can you tell the difference between any babies? I mean, honest to
Not
God,
really,
if you
yeah.
swap my kid out at like 3 weeks, I don't think I'd be able to tell.
All right.
All
Ready
right.
to go to the next one?
Yeah.
All
One
right.
last thing, just a question. I'm going to put you both on the spot because I think this is a good question. And if the live studio audience start throwing out the answer, favorite skit if you have one.
Wow.
wow.
I'll start. It's not even a famous skit, but my favorite moment, probably because as a kid, my favorite memories go around Carol Burnett and the skits they did. And I loved when that fourth wall, third, whatever it's called, shatters and they just break character. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I die laughing. And there was a skit with Debbie Downer that's at Disney World. And Jimmy Fallon's in it. And Mean Girls. Who was the actress for Mean Girls?
Lindsay Lohan?
Lindsay Lohan's in the skit, and they just all fall apart. The chick who does the Debbie Downer destroys them, just takes them apart literally at the seams, and they all lose it. And if you've never seen it, it's on SNL. It's my favorite skit, not because the skit itself was funny, but watching the actors turn into themselves. They absolutely fell apart. That fourth wall, thank you, Thomas, was destroyed. And I'll watch that over and over and over again.
I think one of my absolute favorites that at the time made me laugh the hardest was Patrick Swayze dancing as a playgirl with Chris Farley. Now you look back on it and you're like, well, okay, but and cowbell, yes, cowbell. We need more cowbell. Yes, my husband just said that one. Cowbell was probably my two top skits for me.
Cowbell's coming on the comments.
Well, you took the Patrick Swayze, Chris Farley one from me. So I'm going to go either Chris Farley Down by the River, Matt Foley, or I'm going to go with Chris Farley, David Spade, and Adam Sandler as the Gap Girls or whatever they were.
Yeah.
For my more modern ones, although going back to the older ones with Eddie Murphy as Gumby and Dan Aykroyd doing what's her name that used to did the cooking shows, and he like gets his hand stuck in the blender.
Yeah.
It's keep going on. Cheeseburger with John Belushi. I mean, it's just so many.
And I think my favorite part of SNL now is the thing that I thought sucked the most when I was a kid, and that's Weekend Update. I think Shay and Colin Farrell, I said it wrong. Colin quit. Help me.
What's his face?
Yeah. Colin something. And Michael Shea are both just absolutely hilarious the way they play off each other. And if you have not seen their yearly thing where they write jokes for each other, have you seen that one?
No.
I think it's for New Year's. They do a shtick where they each write the other person's jokes. And no matter how bad it is, they have to say it. And the things that they're forced to say were bad. Check it out.
My husband just said another one too. Dick in a Box.
Dick in a Box. Yes.
Yeah. Dick in a Box was I still watch that at Christmas time. It's funny.
Somebody else mentioned Roseanne.
He's funny. He's got comedic timing. Justin Timberlake's got really good comedic timing. Most of his skits are pretty funny.
Yeah. that when he does the Bee Gees with
Yeah.
What's his
Colin
face?
Jost.
What's his face and everybody today? Yeah, those were also good.
Somebody mentioned Rosanna Dana too with Gilda Radner.
Yeah.
So good. I remember that one because that's when we talk a lot about remembering sitting in your living room, watching TV and that nostalgia that it brings back. And I remember sitting there watching Rosanna Dana with Gilda Radner at the drive-in movie theater. Really, really funny. And even more recently, the one with, oh, Jesus, who played Barbie?
I never played Barbie. What are you trying to say?
No, or not Barbie. Who played Ken in Ken and Barbie? Ryan Gosling?
Yes.
They just did the Beavis and Butthead skit that went viral. If you saw that, if you didn't see
Oh, it was hilarious.
Oh my God. That was probably the funniest thing they've done in 20 years. Honestly.
Up there like that. Yeah.
John, look it up. It's the Beavis and Butthead. It's probably the funniest
hilarious.
skit they've had in 20 years, man. Honestly.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Oh, I also like when they get abducted by aliens. What's her face? And they
Yes.
those are so my
Those
boss
are good. The man spread on the leg. She sells it. Dude, we could do this. So now let's go to the second topic, which is also Saturday Night Live in the 80s.
Yeah. So the second topic, we could do the whole show on that, is Van Halen. Could be either the David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar. I'd love to know from the audience which one you preferred, because that is a very controversial question. People take sides pretty hardcore.
I think most Gen Xers that I've seen when it comes up on my page are partial to David Lee Roth as a front man, just because he is like the front man's front man. You can have conversations about raw talent. You can have conversations about songwriting or performance in terms of talent, but in terms of just owning the stage and being on there, I haven't seen too many people come into my comments saying that Hagar was the better front man. I think it always comes down to David Lee Roth in my experience.
See, look, we're already having Hagar, Sammy.
You see, and I saw David Lee Roth. He was my MTV like you said, he was the front man. He was who I saw on MTV. He was who I looked at and I said, he is Van Halen. That was what I grew up with him. But to say another fairly controversial thing, other than a few of their songs, I was not a huge Van Halen fan.
Whoa.
Get out.
No.
Get out. Get out. We're going to bring somebody on camera. If anybody's got a camera handy, just go over to riverside.fm and I'll log you in. Just get out. Why are you even here?
I wasn't. I would. It was just their song.
How?
Yes, I loved it. Their music
though?
a little bit, but I just wasn't one of the. I wasn't one of the groupies of them. I just did.
I'm not saying groupie, but even you can't even say that. It was on every brown paperback book cover from 6th grade till like 9th. Everybody put the Van Halen thing somewhere on that brown paperback book cover.
Oh yeah, I did that, but I didn't like Genesis either, John. So there's.
Well, I didn't like Genesis.
So.
Genesis is a little bit more niche than Van Halen.
Yeah, Genesis.
I mean, I liked them. Don't get me wrong. It just they weren't my gig.
Van Halen, I like Sammy Hagar. I'm not, I don't study voices or anything, but it seems like maybe Sammy Hagar was the more of the vocal talent. But David Lee Roth, as you said, John, front man's front man. And all I can tell you, like, if you just they used, I think they were one of the best bands in terms of using MTV, using videos, using MTV. Because of
Shell managed to shell your episode. I don't know how she did it. I can't get past the fact that she shelled your episode by throwing away Van Halen. The comments are now filled with getting rid of her shell.
Like, just make her go. Just go. Yeah.
Now, I think they used MTV as good as anybody.
Yeah.
With the videos. So Hot for Teacher, I mean, I used to wait for that one to come on. Yeah. And that's the point, to your point. He wasn't just, he was actually pretty good at the acting that you would have in a music video. And then Jump, my God. Like that video and just him, jumping up off the platform onto the stage. Amazing.
I don't know how much Sammy Hagar got involved in the writing. I think I remember hearing that it generally was the Van Halen brothers actually that did a lot of the writing, but you notice a noticeable shift in the music. There was a difference between Van Halen and Van Hagar. to put it that way. So I think there was some of that. When Diamond Dave went off on his own, it was I'm Just a Gigolo. He kind of started doing covers and never was able to find his rhythm without Van Halen. So I would. Yeah. I'm sorry?
No, I'm saying he still did great videos, though.
Yeah. But I guess my point is that, again, there's the difference between the performer and the talent. And that's how I would split it. I would absolutely give David Lee Roth the performer one, and I would probably give Hagar the talent. Not saying they both weren't talented, but if I had to say who was better.
And I wonder, the reason I love Van Halen is because, again, to your point, John, about the music changing, but has there been another band, and maybe I'm missing a very obvious one, that changed their front man like Van Halen did and didn't really miss a beat? I mean, the music shifted a little bit, but that could have, with most bands, that's it. Once the front man leaves, they don't usually recapture any kind of magic. And it's pretty incredible that they did. And they did it for so long. So I don't know, like if there's another.
There's not many, but again, the name of the band was Van Halen. So it's ironic that the front man really wasn't the person that owned the band. You know, it was the brothers. So maybe that had something to do with it. The writing was a big part of what made them so amazing. And they got lucky. They got lucky that they found somebody else that could carry the torch. Shell.
Somebody else on the comments said it was a guy's band. And I kind of have to agree. It was like a cross between rock and pop that didn't resonate well with me. I don't know. I cannot argue.
Okay,
I cannot argue the guitarists and stuff. Like you are absolutely.
How about Styx?
Talent.
People are making good points. Styx was a cross between pop and rock. How about Journey?
I wasn't a fan. I listened to them. I didn't go buy their. Just
you never bought a Journey album?
Mm-mm.
I
didn't buy albums. In my defense, I did not buy albums until probably, or, maybe 89, 90, whenever I could drive and I could go out. Like I was mostly a radio.
Oh, I forgot you grew up in the sticks. Did they have album stores? They're like malls? Did they have malls where you grew up?
They had malls where we were.
Was it a 4-hour drive?
It was a little bit of a drive. We didn't go very often. We really didn't. And we made mixtapes more than we would tape stuff off of the radio and we would pick our favorite songs off the radio. Now I appreciate Styx and Journey a lot more now than I did back then.
Somebody mentioned AC/DC as a band that changed lead singers and didn't really miss a beat. And that's a great one because, man.
I loved AC/DC. See?
Bon Scott and Brian Johnson. I mean, that's probably the best comparison, I think, to a band not missing a beat with a new lead singer.
Van Halen and some of these other bands also, we all know the Van Halen fans that claimed to be Van Halen fans when nobody was a Van Halen fan. So as soon as they crossed over with Jump and became like successful, there's a lot of people, especially back then. Again, we've talked about Gen X being this counterculture phenomenon where this group of people that always wanted to be on the thing that nobody else was on. And I could see Shell's like, I don't want that. That's popular. No, I'm going to listen to Echo and the Bunnymen instead. And Chris, you probably have a little bit of that too. And I probably do too. I would listen to music that, you wanted to discover that. So when bands became the norm, when they were playing on, like Shell, I could see you averse to anything that hit the top 10 on Billboard. You're like, ooh, Phil Collins, ooh, Journey, ooh, that's too fat.
In a way, yes. But I think the problem was, and to your point about living far away, didn't buy cassettes until I was, 89 or 90 or whatever. I heard the song yes, I went corning. I heard the song so often because the only source of music that we had was a couple of radio stations. No, I did not like Debbie Gibson and Tiffany. I heard the song so often that they were overplayed in my head for me. And then I just lost interest in them. And my bands that I loved were later on.
I Think We're Alone Now is a good song.
Oh, I like all this electricity now.
Do you have Wi-Fi yet?
I always talk about too, like soundtracks and of course Van Halen. I mean, if you don't know like how many soundtracks they were on, just some of the bigger ones, Night Shift, Back to the Future. Eddie Van Halen actually had a little bit of a score on there. Better Off Dead, if you remember that. Everybody Wants Some. Spaceballs, Twister, Lethal Weapon 4, Big Daddy, Detroit Rock City, if you ever saw that one. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but Superbad. And then even David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar individually had songs on different. Sammy Hagar was on Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Footloose, Vision Quest, Moving Violations, The Sure Thing, Over the Top, Back to the Future Part 2, all in the 80s. Pretty awesome. So, I mean, I, as you guys know, I'm a huge 80s movie soundtrack person. And so I just think it's cool that they were on so many of them.
I did Van Halen as a reveal for one episode, and I used Twister as one of the.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Because that was one a lot of people didn't realize, because they did. Eddie Van Halen wrote scores for music. If you say that, Eddie was featured on the Twister soundtrack, you're like, I don't remember a Van Halen song on there. You'd never know it was him. Mm-hmm. It was an actual musical score, and then on top of it, of course, he played guitar on Beat It and did it he didn't get credit for it initially. There were people that immediately knew it was him. I was never that good a guitar player / listener. I couldn't do that. But people heard it and go, that's Eddie Van Halen. And to his credit and to Michael Jackson's credit back then, he actually changed the song. And Michael Jackson allowed him to. He changed that portion. He rewrote it. He made it better. And Michael Jackson's like, that's awesome. Jackson didn't have this huge ego. It was about the music. And he's like, that's awesome.
No one can deny their talent. I mean, absolutely. Van Halen, David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar, they all had incredible talent. No one can take that away.
Well, I mean, you speaking of Michael Jackson, of course he didn't get, I mean, I don't think he was credited either. He didn't want to be credited for, I always feel like somebody's watching me, Rockwell, but you knew it was him. You could hear it. You knew it was him, just like you would know Eddie Van Halen's guitar style. And of course, in one of my favorite movies, The Wedding Singer, when he says, take off the t-shirt before the band breaks up. And she had the Van Halen t-shirt on. And he's like, take off that t-shirt and you're going to make the band break up. I think that's what he said.
I never knew Phil Collins was a bit of a dick by anyone that worked with him.
Huh.
Then again, I never worked with him.
Well, he did leave somebody drowning. So
ADHD has this thing, and I didn't realize it till later. A lot of times I thought I was just weird. People with ADHD, one common trait amongst us is we'll hyperfocus on music. I can listen to the same song 20 times in a row, and it just causes like a serotonin surge in my brain. I can listen to the same spot in a song over and over and over again, to the point that my wife's heard me doing, she'll hear it over my headphones and stuff. She's like, do you keep replaying that part of the song? So for me, it never bothered me, I guess, when songs got overplay really on the radio. It does this weird, as soon as it starts playing, I get like a serotonin surge, and it's comforting for me. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but I was watching a TikTok of all things, and somebody was talking about it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's me. That's the cool thing about social media, is discovering pieces of yourself that you wouldn't admit to or you didn't realize were common among other people.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
so
Doreen too.
What?
Doreen says me too. Denise as well. Very cool. So I don't know. What else about Van Halen? Anything?
I mean, I'd love to hear from everybody. I got into a conversation with a bunch of people, and we were talking about, who would you put in the top 10 rock bands of all time? And I said Van Halen, and everybody else is like, no way. Like, you can't put Van Halen in the top 10. I'm like, I'm sorry, but if I'm looking at longevity, if I'm looking at the amount of music that they put out, and not just the popular songs, but if you actually listen to a whole album like I did with Van Halen, and then recognize that Eddie Van Halen was one of the greatest guitarists of all time, that David Lee Roth was one of the greatest frontmen, that Sammy Hagar was one of the greatest rock vocalists. It's hard to say like they shouldn't be in the top 10. So I'm curious as we wrap up here, if anybody agrees, disagrees, top 10, top 20.
Are they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I would hope so. If they're not,
I'm curious because I saw a news article here just recently, like Billy Idol just went up for nomination into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like he wasn't in there. And not that I think, that he was amazing or anything, a couple good songs, White Wedding, whatever.
Yeah.
But is Van Halen in there? Maybe our audience knows.
yeah, I would hope so. Considering some of the bands that they put in recently.
Says number 11. I'd go top 20, but at the same time, I probably would be hard pressed to come up with 10 bands and not include Van Halen. It depends on criteria. I mean, if we look at impact that they had on pop culture and longevity, then yeah, because they'll be talked about forever. Certain songs of theirs will be played forever. If you talk about sheer talent and impact on industry based on changing music and trends versus following them, maybe not. Their music didn't change music. They kind of followed along with the music and made adaptations to make sure they stayed on trend. So I don't know. Definitely top 20.
Van Halen was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007. The band was inducted by Velvet Revolver.
Of course, Samantha Fox. I mean,
Yeah, Annie said Samantha Fox. That's my number one rock star poster for sure. No question about it. Or posters, I should say. I had several. Yeah, I was just curious because it was a really fun conversation actually, because we were talking about how there isn't a whole lot of rock and roll anymore. I don't know what happened, and maybe we'll have a resurgence, but we were asking like, what is there an arena rock band that could literally sell out an arena anymore? And we thought the only one really is the Foo Fighters. That's about it.
So this just was a conversation actually on I was listening to Spotify or no, Sirius, and U2 is contemplating an arena tour. And there's a question, does U2 have enough? Does it have what it takes to sell out an arena tour? And then it opened up the broader question, if not them, who? But I wouldn't say just rock disappeared. I'd say all genres of music have taken a hit as it's morphing into this one sound. Yeah. Everything is funneling in. I mean, people talk about right, wrong, or otherwise. Is Beyonce a country singer? Regardless.
No.
The fact that it's even up for debate tells you that music is merging. Taylor Swift being unidentifiable, whether that's country or pop or hip hop, and doing a little bit of everything. The diversity in music is scientifically so much less than it used to be. People have studied it, putting it into computers. It's turned into one sound.
And you probably saw it, John. I just did a video on this about MTV. Us being the MTV generation, when MTV stopped playing music, we would hear Madonna, like my video said, we would hear Madonna alongside Judas Priest. And then we would hear, Michael Jackson and followed up by Van Halen, and you would hear one song and then say, oh, now I need to go. And, now I want that album. And then you would go and listen to the B-sides. And the problem I think anymore is there really aren't any B-sides. And maybe because I hadn't bought the Van Halen albums, I didn't get to appreciate their music because I didn't listen to the B-sides. I think the missing B-sides is an important reason why music has taken that dip, and it's just doesn't have the variety anymore because MTV stopped playing music. We listened to one song and that's it. And it destroyed the art, basically.
Well, I think also I talk about this with 80s pop culture. It was the last decade when you think about pop culture, in my opinion, where the pop culture wasn't manufactured. Mm-hmm. In the 90s, towards the mid 90s, stuff started being manufactured more on the music side than on the movie side, but now it's the movies too. And so you have a person and then you create a song or you create a musician. Instead of the musicians like, the Motley Crues of the world starting in those small bars in LA on whatever they're on Skid Row or off of Skid Row. And then you had the CBGBs where these, bands would go, more of the kind of punk progressive stuff was going through CBGBs, and Blondie and Billy Idol, you mentioned earlier. Does that stuff still exist? You had the LL Cool J's that were creating mixtapes to sell on the street out of the trunk of his uncle's car. There was this creativity that was happening because stuff wasn't being there. You had your boy bands, yes, but there was still this opportunity. There were still these lanes for these bands to work their way up and get discovered. And I'm sure that's happening today. I just don't know that
It
it's
is.
happening on that scale.
Annie brings up a good point. She says we were ready to record all on the VHS at 9. I'd forgotten that moment. I remember sitting on my boombox with my fingers on the pause button because I'd already put play and record together and hit pause. So now I just had to hit the pause button to release it. I'd forgotten that I did the same thing with MTV. I would record videos the way I used to record songs on the radio.
Mhm.
And the good news is they stepped on the ending much, much less when it was a video. Although they would show shortened versions of the videos. You only got to see the long version maybe once or twice. And after that, they gave the abridged version.
And
Yes.
this sounds really silly, but one of the things I appreciated about MTV was down in the bottom little left corner, it was the name of the song, the name of the band, the name of the album, all the details about it were listed right there. You didn't have to look it up. And I appreciated that. It actually.
Where would you look it up?
Exactly. I mean, like nowadays you'd have to look it up is what I'm saying. But like, that's how we got to know what album this was actually from or what it was on. And I couldn't name you an album now. Well, I'm kind of out of the music scene right now. So
I want to get back into it. Our buddy Record Hound, who's almost always part of our live studio audience. Record Hound, I gotta collaborate with you and maybe start doing a thing where once a month, once a week, something, I do a video that just showcases new music. Because I hate the fact that I'm not up on music. But then when I listen to, God, I'm gonna sound old.
I know
When I listen to the garbage that my 13-year-old listens to, it's just. Then I'm like, well, that's why I don't listen to it. But I'm sure to Chris's point, there's music out there that I still would like. I'm just not hearing it on, as portions of a song on TikTok.
Well, to Shell's point, she mentioned the top 40, and I've talked about this too, that you'd have in the top 15 or 20 at any one time, you'd have Van Halen next to Depeche Mode, next to LL Cool J, next to, Kenny Rogers, and then throw in some Debbie Gibson. I mean,
Yeah.
So the music, everybody was hearing the music. And I think maybe somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, Gen X, the music's out there. You're just not hearing it. And I'm sure it is. It's just that when you look, if you just go to the top 100, for example, and you look at the sales, there's no diversity there. And so I think that's the big issue. That music's out there, but it's not getting volume. And
the other amazing thing is we used to sample music from 20 years ago. The 80s did it. The 2000s did it back to the 80s. They're sampling songs that are months old.
Yeah.
They're going back and reusing songs that are still out on the air already. And I'm like, oh, I know this song. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. That's not even this song.
Yeah.
They've already remade the song that just got made.
Yeah.
It sounds even more like what's already out there because you're hearing two versions of the same song within 6 months.
If anybody had saw it in the live studio chat, I actually had a video that went kind of viral too about MTV having a thing called the Crew Rule and from Motley Crue. And Motley Crue had this, they went #1 with Home Sweet Home on Dial MTV for so many weeks. One summer that they actually implemented a thing called the Crew Rule where you couldn't dial in and ask for Motley Crue's Home Sweet Home anymore, basically, because it dominated the charts and MTV wanted to give a chance for other songs. Like you said, LL Cool J beside Depeche Mode had to be played. And they made a rule that after 30 days, the songs were no longer eligible. And it was known as the Crew Rule. So
last I looked, that video was over 1 million for you, Shell.
What's that? Yeah, it was a lot of views. Yeah, it was a lot of views. Yeah.
All right, so we're like an hour in. And we still haven't even gotten to the third topic.
I was late. It's his fault. We just yakking, so we're good.
Are we ready for the third topic?
I'm ready to go.
All right.
And this is my favorite of the three, and it's always my favorite of the three. I love that we've started doing this.
So the third topic is high school house parties, and hopefully none of you are going to those anymore. If you are, you need to leave the chat immediately. But what do you guys remember about your high school house parties?
You're gonna laugh at me.
You didn't get to go to any of them.
No, you're just gonna laugh at me. Like
You guys didn't have them because you just didn't know they existed?
I wasn't invited to too many. I was working, but let's see what Shaw has to say.
We had field parties.
Well, okay, so I'll say high school parties. How about that?
High school parties, okay? Because most of the time
you had to have house
weren't
parties.
anybody's house.
There's a difference, though.
Yes,
and I had field parties, and I grew up on the lake, so we had lake parties. We'd go to the bluffs, which is these great, and they have lake parties. That's one thing. that's the cops came and busted it and pulled up and you went running away in the car. That's a different vibe entirely, though, I will say. The house party was someone taking their life into their own hands because their parents trusted them with the home alone, and they broke that trust.
That's right.
That is a very different vibe, as the kids would say, because there was so much more risk involved.
Yes.
I did one and only one house party and paid for it dearly.
Oh, I did one. Oh, yeah. And I same. I did one in my house. I invited people over. Then they told a friend who told a friend who told a friend. And pretty
Every
soon,
time.
oh, boy, there were people trudging through my parents' house. They got out food out of the refrigerator. They were sticking it in the blender.
The living room. The formal upstairs living room that I blocked off, they got into it.
Oh, yeah.
My mother found beer bottles in the grandfather clock. My friends are assholes. That's the kind of thing you do only because you want your friend dead. My mom was finding beer bottles for weeks, and every time she did it, it was like, again from that party. And she'd get mad all over again. I'm like, geez. And then I had friends that had house parties all the time, and there were those friends with those parents. The parents that were cool. And they're like, now, I don't mind if you kids drink. I don't want anyone driving. You're all spending the night. I'm like, who are these people?
Yeah, no. We grew up in the country a little bit, and the houses were too far away. I mean, so they're you couldn't walk to someone's house for this. So yeah, we definitely had to clean up after a house party. But yeah, it just wasn't as much of a thing for me. It was always the bonfires.
That's pretty clever, actually. Charge $5 and call the cops yourself. Keep the money in the beer. Yeah, I mean, and that's, you were mentioning earlier, Shell, about like just that. Well, I mean, you mentioned the beer bottles and the grandfather clock, but the idea that you would, hey, I'm just gonna have a few people over, never happened, never worked. And this was, I mean, what was incredible is that we had this communication network and we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
Like we somehow, people from 7 towns over, 45, 50 minutes away, would show up at your party. And that happened to me, where I was like, and then of course there's always problems because there'd be like rival high schools there. And it's like, people that wanted to get into a fight, was almost inevitable that was going to happen. But how everybody found out about these parties as quickly as they did, because you would say on a Thursday, like, hey, I'm having a few people over on Saturday. 300 people show up. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine now in this day and age, how do you, it's impossible, right? How would you have a house party without hundreds of kids showing up? It would be almost
impossible. They always did. They always found out about it. They always realized what was happening. And you would say, I remember at the one party that I would go at, or my friends would host a party, and there'd always be the person that showed up that's not really friends with the person hosting it. And they'd be like, I don't want that person here. Yeah. Why are they here? And then there was the drama. Somebody get Brian out of here. He doesn't want it. It's like, that was always the way it happened.
And there were a lot of movies, you see a lot of movies that depict the high school party thing. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but besides the obvious, like college parties, like frat, Animal House and such. But I saw a comment on there that said it made Animal House look like a Disney flick. They said that they went to house parties that made Animal House look like a Disney flick. And I said, yeah, I mean, I've been to a few things like that. Yeah. Then
a good one in the 90s, a good house party movie was Can't Hardly Wait. That was basically around a house party. It's really good. Yeah, it's a good high school movie outside of the 80s, which I don't think there are many anymore.
Well, and then the other big house party movie, or just parties in general, was, I saw it recently. I saw it again, Dazed and Confused.
Oh my God.
And there was always the older guy. There was always the Matthew McConaughey that's like, didn't you graduate like 2 years ago? Why are you still here? Like, all right. High school parties. They were still there. Yeah. And we kind of allowed it because sometimes they were old enough to get the beer. Yeah. So we're like, all right, you can buy the beer.
Yeah. LIVIN.
If we have moderators in chat, there's somebody being a douche, and I'm trying to get rid of them, but on my phone, it's going by so fast that I can't even catch up. So Wirehead or Sheila, if you guys see anything inappropriate in chat, just take care of it for me if you don't mind.
Oh,
that's all.
Oh, I don't know what they were saying. I missed it.
There's always somebody.
I'll find out later.
Yeah. All right. That's actually that's my text message. Actually, every time I get a text message, And so no matter what kind of mood I'm in, I just smile because it
Yeah.
just reminds me of Wooderson. Yeah, there's a missile in my house, Gary. That's a good one too. I mean, the house party in Weird Science was good as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, and
Well,
that was
listen-
like 90s movies and 80s movies. I mean, that was another trope where we'd always see the house party. That was a big deal. Even Risky Business. If you want to
Yeah.
see the house party gone wrong, I mean, hell, two tropes in one. There's the house party and the prostitutes that were invited to make sure the house party went well.
Yeah.
You know, and the egg. We may not have all had a Fabergé egg in our house, but there were things, if it was mom's Hummel collection or whatever it was, that were just, and that's what all your friends gravitated to. They're walking around juggling Hummels. I'm like, what are you doing?
Why did all of our moms have Hummels and Hummel? Boomer. Oh my goodness, I need to do a video on that, like Boomer collectibles. You know what I mean? Like, what were all the big Boomer collectibles? My mom used to collect made in occupied Japan ceramics. That's what my mom collected, made in occupied Japans.
16 Candles house party. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't thought of that scene. If you would tell me, like, Risky Business, the house party scene is probably the last thing I would think of, but it was done real.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. All of these people just trashing the house.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other trope would be the parents would call and everybody have to be really quiet. So everybody quiet down, quiet down, quiet down. And then they're like, listen, the dinner got canceled. We're on our way home. Do you want us to pick anything up? And it's just like the rush to clean everything. I remember the day after my party, I had plenty of time to clean up, but there's just something stupid about us that it's always last minute.
Mhm.
We're still, and we didn't get it done in time.
And there was always the trope too that if you've seen it in the movies, there was always toilet paper in the trees outside. There's just toilet paper.
Yeah.
It's toilet paper. Somebody just used toilet. Yeah, yes, there was. You shut up.
I think that was a Pennsylvania thing.
No.
16 Candles especially had a lot of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Bradford plate collection. Only Boomer parents, Silent Gen parents, would put fragile plates on a wall. They wanted us to break the shit. There's just no other way.
It was a dare.
If they were smart, they would have collected pieces of wood, not fragile porcelain.
I'm writing this down. Boomer
What's going on, Luna? Welcome.
Boone's Farm, somebody mentioned Mad Dog, Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Thunderbird, when we had a little thing was let's see, I think it was what's the price? $1 twice. What was it? I can't remember the whole rhyme. Maybe somebody remembers it. But there was something to do with Thunderbird.
Well, and then the other thing, you can't forget it. And I mean, it is what it is. At some point, there would be people like splitting off from the party. And if it was your party, you'd have to make sure to start checking bedrooms because there are people doing things in your parents' bedroom that you didn't want them doing in your parents' bedroom.
My house party didn't go that far.
As far as you know. Were you guys playing Mad Libs? Were you the person that threw that house party?
No.
Were you like, Monica, everybody please put the cap back on the marker until you hear it click.
I could tell you stories.
It was
like, that wasn't you. I'd be like, yeah, it was.
It wasn't actually. Now that I think about it, like Say Anything had a house party.
Yeah.
Lesson Zero had a disturbing
house party. Speaking of people doing things in bedrooms you don't want them doing. If you haven't seen that Robert Downey Jr. scene, you won't know what I'm talking about. And if you have seen it, you can thank me for bringing that particular scene back in your head. No pun intended. Yeah, let's talk about it. Doreen, good point. So house party games. Especially when we were younger. That's a good one because I remember those. Spin the bottle.
7 minutes in heaven.
7 minutes in heaven. Did you spend 7 minutes in heaven, Rochelle?
Yeah, a couple times.
You did?
Of course.
I never did.
No?
No.
Yeah, no, we did. But we
No girl wanted. I'm not saying we didn't. I'm saying I didn't. No girl wanted to spend 7 minutes.
What happened? The
Me,
reality
a girl,
was,
and my glasses wouldn't all fit in the same closet.
those were more like a childish. Those were not high school games. Those were more like middle school games. And middle school games, when you went into a 7 minutes in heaven closet, you just kind of went in there and pretended like you were, like it was something, and whatever. I don't know. Nothing really ever happened because they were childish by the time we got to high school.
But we did. We played Asshole, which is a
stiff as
card
a
game.
board, light as a
Oh,
feather.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
But even in high school, we did Asshole, which is, they became drinking games in high school. We did funnels. Funnels were huge, just funnel and funnel and funnel of beer. Keg stands.
Yeah, keg stands. Did them.
Quarters, I never mastered the down the nose thing, but I was pretty good from bouncing it off the table.
Oh, I remember quarters. Yeah, I forgot about quarters. Yeah, there was Truth or Dare. There was that. There was in the younger years, it's girl sleepovers, Bloody Mary, scratching at the mirror at midnight.
The Ouija board.
30 minutes in heaven.
Yeah.
Jesus, I'm 55 years old. 30 seconds, maybe. In heaven might be a stretch. Hoboken. I'm down to 30 seconds in Hoboken.
Tequila asked about the two old guys. That was the wine. The two old guys of the wine. That was Bartles and James.
Bartles and James.
Yeah.
We thank you for your support.
Mr. Bull, I concur. Shotguns, yep, shotgunning beer. There was also a thing with our bottles that guys, I don't think girls ever did this, but guys, if you weren't watching your beer and you weren't careful, your buddy would come and just tap the top of your bottle with the bottom of his, which would cause it to shoot up, and more than once cause the top to shatter. And a buddy of mine went to drink because somebody tapped his beer, and just beer bottle came down and the blood just started coming out his mouth.
Ugh.
Strip poker. High school parties, strip poker, nah, too big. I mean, I guess that sounds like an intimate type of thing. Like there'd be less people.
Mm-hmm. No, I never did it.
Twister?
Never played
Twister.
I've played Twister, but never on that. Never like a high school party drinking Twister.
No. It was beer pong, quarters. Those were big, those were big games for us. At a big party, you'd always had a place somewhere where everybody was doing
I just remember Asshole the game being a lot of fun because you could make up rules, and that one just got everybody drunk fast. And that was the whole point of it, just to get as fast as you could. John asks, who played Match the Keys? Is that like throwing your keys in a bowl? Is that what that means?
I think that's what he's talking about.
I never played that. If you bonked my beer, I sprayed you with it, says Devil. That's fair.
Oh, God. The cigarette butts in the cans that you couldn't see and you drank it.
Now, that was more when I was a kid. I remember cleaning at parties. I'd clean away the cans from my parents. And if I thought I could, if someone didn't finish their beer, I would take a swig. And more than once, I got something like that.
I used to dip. And you'd always make the mistake. Somebody would end up picking it up.
Drinking it in. Yeah, I can't even talk about it. But I was actually thinking that myself because I've actually seen that happen. And it was, oh, my God.
Yeah,
I can still taste it to this day.
It's not good.
Not good.
No.
Well, we're past the hour mark. How are we doing?
I think we're doing pretty good.
I mean, tell you, I don't have a clue at this point.
Chicken fights in the pool. That was good, too, if you did a pool there.
Chicken fights is always a bad idea. I mean, pool
it's a terrible idea, but I mean, you were hammered in 16, so of course.
Yeah, I remember a few of my friends with high school parties had pools, and it eventually some people there were clothes in the pool just jumping in. And you could just the stress on whose ever house the party was at was unbelievable. You could see it, but we would pressure our friends into it. We're like, Mark, dude, your parents are going out of town. And Mark's like, no, man, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not having a party, not at my house. My parents would kill me. And it's like, well, okay, just a few of us. We'll just get a few of us together. And that was the beginning of the end. It was never just a few.
Yep. All right. So we had SNL in the 80s. We had Van Halen. And we had, we'll say, high school parties. I said high school house parties, but they could be field parties or whatever. But high school parties. I dropped a lot of hints.
I think he probably read it off at some point.
I
could tell when he was dropping hits. He told us who Van Halen was on soundtracks. You could just tell he was trying to help us.
Yeah.
I could actually almost tell when Chris was trying to help us along, and I just still couldn't make the connection.
I think I have a guess, but I don't know if it might not be good. I don't know.
All right. Well, let's see if anybody has some guesses in here first.
I'm looking.
What the connection might be.
Some people have said things like that Van Halen was a band on and was a featured band on SNL. So that's a connection, but that doesn't connect everything together. Imagine pool parties with cell phone generation. Dude, they would be busting themselves left and right. All a parent would have to do is go on TikTok or Instagram, and these kids would blow themselves in. Yeah, Fahim, good question. So Fahim says, is there a common theme we have to work out? Every week, we will get, this is basically a game. Every week we talk about 3 different topics relevant to 70s, 80s, and or 90s pop culture. And within the 3 topics, there is a common theme. By the end, we have to work out if we can. JTR says it's probably Calvin Klein. It very well could be.
Someone else said it too, Calvin Klein.
And you'll notice that our live studio audience, there's a lot of recurring jokes. You'll catch on. Keep coming. Keep joining. You will begin to see that. But today's 3 topics were, again, Chris?
The 3 topics were, hold on.
Van Halen.
No.
Saturday Night Live in the 80s.
Saturday Night Live in the 80s, Van Halen, and high school house parties.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a good guess. I can't connect it. Valerie Bertinelli, Sheila. Good guess. I mean, you can connect her to Van Halen easily enough.
My guess. I have a guess. Do you want
throw it out there?
Audience?
Throw it out there.
I thought maybe it was Wayne's World.
No, but you're on the right track.
Okay, I was thinking Wayne's World because of Saturday Night Live. Of course, I think they were more 90s than they were 80s, and then thinking they were big rock fans. And was it on the Wayne's World movie?
He said no, Shell. He said no.
I know, but that's where my line.
I don't know why you keep
thinking no. Was going.
Yeah. No. Eddie Van Halen played with the Saturday Night Live band while Valerie.
You're getting
my
close.
head hurt.
Some people are getting close.
Last American Virgin.
The Anthony Michael Hall connection was pretty close.
And you hit that one pretty hard. Vacation.
Somebody got it. In the
Weird Science.
The name I can never say.
Weird Science.
Weird Science is the connection.
Okay.
Weird Science.
Because Anthony Michael Hall
is Anthony. So you have Anthony Michael Hall in SNL and Robert Downey Jr. They were both in the same season, both in Weird Science.
Okay.
Then you had Van Halen, which was Pretty Woman was on the soundtrack. They did Roy Orbison's song Pretty Woman on the soundtrack. And then you have House Party, one of the greatest house parties and craziest house parties of all time in movies, was in Weird Science, which now all of us get to feel old, is having its 40th anniversary this August.
Wow. Ratatosker. From now on, I'm going to call you Rat. Hey, Rat. Rat nailed it. Put it together for us. And that's about as succinct as you can get. He was in Weird Science, directed by John Hughes, House Party movie, and was in SNL for 12 episodes, 1985 to 1986. Van Halen was also on SNL on 2/28/1987.
And on the Weird Science soundtrack.
That's how you tie an episode together. Rochelle, I hope you were taking notes.
No. I love how our audience really does, they're on their computers, they're whatever, and they're really trying to look this stuff up. They're really trying to make those connections, really coming up with good guesses. I got to give our audience a lot of credit because they are amazing. We really wouldn't be here without you guys doing this. And you tell us facts sometimes and fill in the gaps for things that we just either can't get off the tip of our tongue or don't know or just have nothing to say about.
Yes, Sheila, the t-shirt was a hint. Mm-hmm. John Hughes film. And you couldn't see my chalkboard, but on my chalkboard today it says, "Do you realize it's snowing in my room? God damn it." Which is a classic Bill Paxton Chet quote from Weird Science.
I know you didn't answer my question.
What?
Were you taking notes? You see how he tied those 3 things together? Like each single movie, each single topic related to the thing at the end. Closely. Like it was a true connection.
And for the new people here, they'll just forget all the hundreds of other episodes that we've done where I tied them up with a bow tie that was so beautiful. Bam.
What have you
Then
done for me
I
lately?
do Calvin Klein, and everybody.
No, you were 2 in a row. You're 2 for 2. You shelled the last 2. Just remember, 3 strikes.
I've been stressed. Okay, I've been stressed.
You're at strike 2.
I got next week's topics. I'm telling you, I got them
All right.
already. So.
Let's talk weird science for a minute.
Wirehead was funny. He said, as a teen, I was deeply moved by the line. So what do you little maniacs want to do first?
Could the movie be made today?
No, of course not.
No.
Maybe things are starting to move a little bit. I've heard that Happy Gilmore 2 is going to bring some humor back. That's what I've been reading from the director and everybody else. So, at this moment, no, but who cares? I mean, I don't want it to be made again anyway. I love it just the way it is. And I think it's an awesome movie. And people forget that Robert Downey Jr. was in it as well. He's one of the bullies. I hear there's a white sale at Towel World.
It's just one of many movies of the time where, thank you so much, Hillbilly. I love that. Yeah. That's exactly what we want to see. And I'll be honest, these are some of the best numbers we've had in the chat. So if any of you have helped by bringing a friend or talking about the show, I can't think. I mean, this has been really a lot of fun. I've got the chat set to, the algorithm will only show us some, because when I went online, there's no way we could keep up otherwise. And I appreciate it. This has been a great show, Chris. It was 3 great topics that brought out great conversation. And to echo Shell's comments, dude, the live studio audience crushed it today.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had a good time putting this one together because, I mean, I love weird science. Just if you want some nostalgia, just Google movies turning 40 this year. It's impressive.
85 was a great year for movies.
1985 was a hell of a year for movies. I could have picked so many movies to connect that we could have had fun talking about from 1985. I mean,
dude, we got all year to do it. That's the best part of it. We've got all year to do it.
I mean, I love weird science because I love, Anthony Michael Hall and, of course, love John Hughes. But, I mean, look, The Breakfast Club, The Goonies, Back to the Future, Commando, Purple Rain. I could go on and on and on, but there's so many. Here we go. Here, this is.
I will answer a quick question. Yes, we do this every Friday, unless one of our schedules is a reason not to. Friday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, and it's on replay. You can watch it on replay, but there's just something cool. If you happen to catch this on replay, try to catch it live and be a part of it, because we really try. You'll see me just clicking away and bringing your comments right on screen. It makes the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Some other movies, just to remind you how awesome we had it growing up. 1985, they're going to turn 40 this year. Rocky IV, Cocoon, which we're all feeling now. Very, very relevant movie for all of us. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Mentioned Weird Science. Terrible movie. Desperately Seeking Susan. Awful. Teen Wolf. Fright Night, one of my favorite vampire movies. St. Elmo's Fire. You mentioned that earlier, John. European Vacation, Fletch, Police Academy 2, Mask, Witness, Better Off Dead. I mean, wow, we were really fortunate.
Yeah, and 86 is almost as good. We've got 2 really great years of bringing things together. And I mean, even like constant, this is the era. I think today marks the 40-year anniversary of the release of We Are the World.
Oh, really?
This week in history.
Is it this week?
So, I mean,
wow.
we were 12 and 13 and 15 and 18 in some of the best years in the history of the world to be those ages. Unequivocally, scientifically, without debate, pop culture peaked in the mid-'80s. And we get to enjoy it here. We get to talk about it every week.
Mm-hmm.
Chris writes about it. Shell makes videos about it. I stream. This is what it's all about.
Yeah. And Weird Science, I mean, just is one of the greats. It's one of the great comedies. And just like John Hughes, he was so good at tying everything up at the end of the movie. As silly as his movies were sometimes, I mean, obviously had some more serious ones like The Breakfast Club and Planes, Trains, Automobiles. That was hilarious, but also, very poignant ending. he was really good at wrapping things up at the end and kind of getting you. We talk a lot about here on this show about characters that do really bad things in 80s movies and then get their comeuppance. And he was really good at doing that. At the bad characters getting their comeuppance, and the ones that we were cheering for figuring it out, growing, just like we were all doing in the 80s. We were all growing in the 80s. We're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes when they're kids, and that's what he was really good at. And I think he did a great job with his movies, including Weird Science, where the kids, Gary and Wyatt were just knuckleheads, and they were, their first instinct was what you would expect teenage boys' instincts to be, but she quickly taught them, and they learned about life throughout the movie with all the silliness that was going on. And he was just really good at that.
I can still picture Chet as a giant steaming pile of crap in my brain.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apologizing. Mm-hmm. And then he eats the fly and he's like, oh, I can't believe that he ate the fly.
Credits to Bill Paxton though. Lost him way too young. Bill Paxton was amazing. I was a fan of Bill Paxton.
Next thing you know, you guys will be wearing bras on your heads.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap it up, a couple things. Number one, today's show was sort of brought to you by Duff's Famous Wings in Buffalo, New York. If you happen to be going through the originating city that first created wings, stop by Duff's. Many different locations. New ones coming to a city near you. And if you know of someone, or if you are yourself someone that wants to throw some love at the show, feel free. Send us an email. You can find my link tree in the bio and just connect through there. Secondly, we do this every Friday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. The show is growing. I love to see that. We love doing it. And next week, our host will be Shell, not to be missed. It's never a dull moment when Rochelle is the host. Come see if she manages to get it right, or if this is the last time
I
that
think
Rochelle's allowed to have the
I think you just get upset because sometimes my topics you don't get a point for them. That's the problem. You just weeks before you don't get points for them. You don't solve them, and so you just get jealous.
All right. Well, listen, appreciate y'all. Have a great week. We'll see you again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Thank you guys. Stay rad, everybody.